Alright, okay, good evening everyone. Welcome to the new week. So to get started for today's session, quick disclaimer, everything that I'll be covering in the session over here will be solely based on my personal point of view. And of course, they do not directly translate to any sort of a financial advice or trade signals. So for those of you new, what we do over here is we look into the markets, right? Cover some of the important things. And then, of course, I'll jump into the charts as well to share with you a little bit in terms of the outlook and some of the potential trades that I'm personally looking at. Hopefully, that give you an insight into the market as well. Okay, and give you an idea in terms of like what you can look out for in terms of the week. Okay, so very quickly, let me jump over to the economic point of view. Okay, in terms of understanding what we have this week itself. So give me a while. Let me very quickly highlight some of these things over here. Okay, so for the week itself, between the 5th of August to the 9th of August, there are a couple of interesting things to note. First up is the Aussie RBA rate statement that's going to be happening tomorrow. Right, so you can see over here, the news itself has generated on average about 40 pips of volatility on the Aussie related instruments, Aussie dollar. So do bear in mind if you're trading Aussie related. Okay, and throughout the week, not much until Friday, we have the labor market data. So you can see over here, dollar Canadian had a average movement about 68 pips when this data is being released. Okay. So for those of you interested into news trade, this Friday event would definitely be something that you can keep an eye on. Okay, kind of capturing some short-term volatility. So for those of you who are not familiar, this website over here, Everything Trading, if you go over to the advanced tool, economic insights, this is where you can actually study all the volatility based on historical stats and average. Okay. So you can see certain news are definitely more tradable, right? Like if you compare the Canadian employment data, dollar CAD has a rough average of about 70 pips. Okay, whereas some of this here only generate an average like 20 pips, 70 pips. So this give you an idea like which news you can potentially look to trade and which news you probably want to just avoid. Okay, so for me, anything I think less than like 30, 40 may not be something worth looking at because the movement itself is not huge, right? The volatility is not huge enough for us to capitalize on that. Okay, so that's the overview of the week in terms of like what are some of the economic data you want to be focusing on. Now I'll jump into the charts over here. I think there's very interesting development since last Friday post NFP. The dollar has actually continued to weaken quite a bit. And looking at how things are developing over here, there's a very good possibility we're probably gonna continue to see more downside. Okay, with that impulsive drop over here. So the take is basically we're gonna be bearish bias, and any sort of a corrective pullback on the dollar as of now would definitely be sell opportunities, right? As long as price remains below 104.80. If I kind of zoom out a little bit, how far can this actually develop if we are gonna be a little bit ambitious in doing our expectation? Okay, there's a very good possibility that the downside here can actually go all the way and retest perhaps somewhere around 99.50 zone. Okay, of course, this also add in with the possibility of the first cut happening as soon as September, because the NFP labor market data is just not good, right? Unemployment rate is rising. That starts to pile pressure onto the Fed in cutting rates. Okay, so the dollar over here in terms of the overall direction is definitely going to be bearish. And I would say any corrective pullback is a sell trade opportunity. Okay, so if you look at the euro dollar over here, we had that impulsive push. Of course, in terms of Fibonacci areas, okay, the next key resistance would probably be around 1.1050. The market is trading right now around the psychological number at 1.1. Okay, and of course you can see that impulsive move to the upside. So there's a good possibility we're going to continue to see more upside. Maybe short term, before jumping in any buy, you want to always wait for the pullback before going in. Okay, but the direction is pretty straightforward right now. Okay, I would say any sort of a corrective pullback, you definitely be focusing on the upside. Okay, the directional bias is super clear. Okay, pound dollar is a little bit on the neutral side of things. You know, while the dollar has been weakened quite a bit, pound here also continued to weaken. We had a cut from Bank of England last week as well. Okay, so the charts right now you can see on the technical part, the market isn't moving as much as the dollar index as well as the euro dollar. So GBP USD over here, I would love to see some sort of an impulsive break above that minor swing high at 1.2840 first, okay, before kind of committing to the upside. Okay, but if you kind of look at it from an overall perspective, I'm still expecting one more push, right? But I'm just waiting for the confirmation from the market, waiting for the impulsive price push to the upside. Then only I'm gonna start committing to the buy trade. Okay. Aussie dollar had a massive drop, and then of course a very nice little rejection and bounce. Okay, so right now I think the bottom may have been established, and we'll be looking at potential upside, right? So we did get a break of this low here as well, but the market kind of instantly reject back up as of now. So from an overview perspective, we'll still be expecting upside. Okay, but of course right now, we'll want to see some sort of a corrective pullback. Then only we're gonna look for a buy, right? And of course, ideally, we would love to see the market take out a significant high here first, right? Around 6,550. If we can get that impulsive break, then of course, that opens up more upside. Okay. So yeah, this one here will probably need a little bit more time. I'm not rushing into any of this as of now. Okay. We'll see how things go from here first. Okay. Dollar Canadian. Dollar Canadian here is bearish bias, right? Short term, we are shifting towards bearishness as of now. Longer term, I think it's still upside, but right now, if you're looking at short term opportunity, I think the highs may have been established. Okay, and we are expecting some sort of a pullback, right, before the continuation to the upside. Okay, so something sort of like this. So short term, that opens up the opportunity where we can look for a sell. Okay, so this one here, we'll just put this here. Okay, so we're kind of expecting that pullback. So in a way, short term here, we can actually look for that downside, right? With a target around 1.3765, 1.3725. Dollar Canadian, if I go down to the lower time frame over here, okay, we are starting to get a little bit of a confirmation if you can get a market to actually break and close below this swing low. Okay, we haven't really got that close first because the candle is still developing, right? So if you can get a break and close below, the market continue to go down a little bit more and then start to pull back, we can start to look for sell opportunity from there. Okay, so this is something soon developing, perhaps another 1 to 2 days. By tomorrow maybe we may get that setup coming up. Okay, for the short term to the upside, and after that there's a good chance this may continue back up. The yen pairs here, I think ideally you want to be patient. We had a very impulsive drop, so at some point in time we're likely going to see some sort of a pullback. Okay, so for me, on the yen pairs itself, I'm not going to be rushing things through. We'll be patiently waiting for price to pull back before we jump into the trade itself. Okay, so nothing much on this here. Gold had a pretty nice little trade that we managed to get earlier today, kind of hit our targets pretty easily and quickly as well. Short term here, likely gonna get a little bit more downside. Okay, just let me show you the trade that kind of got involved earlier today. We were looking at that pullback, right? Earlier today, we were looking at this expectation to downside. We get to be tagged in, right? Just almost to the pip. Very nice trade. My target was here. Okay, so kind of got out about like 1:2 point something. It went a little bit lower, but it is what it is, right? I mean, if right now you track it, it's about 1.3. I got out around 1.2 something. Okay, I think no complaints on that because it's a very straightforward trade as well, right? Basically tag us, not much of a drawdown, and then instantly start coming down. So from here on, right, I think short term we may still get a little bit more downside. Maybe a little bit of pullback will give us another opportunity to sell it. But my target eventually is going to be somewhere around 2,350, and from there we may get more upside. Okay, so if I clean this up a little bit, okay, give me a while. Maybe I'll just do a quick screenshot for my journal first. Okay, this. Okay, so basically, if I clean this up over here, okay, we did get a nice little break of structure as the market is coming down as well. So that established a new swing high and swing low. Okay, and 71% does come in quite nicely with this order block area as well, right? So I would say if we can get some sort of a pullback towards that zone, perhaps that's another opportunity for us to look for a sell as well. Okay, and basically we are looking at a pullback and then another sell initiation. So that's something to know. Okay, crude oil here, we are expecting continuation to the downside. Okay, so essentially we are looking at a entire channel structure, continue to expect more downside. You know, any sort of a pullback correctively, as long as price remains below that swing high, we'll be looking at sell side. Okay, so crude oil over here is also another one. Of course, the Fed may need to adjust a little bit. Okay, and of course, that will build in a slightly different entry price point as well. But I think the setup is still valid, right? You can see over here, the Fed area coincide quite nicely with where that previous area of the block is, right? So if you can get a pullback, that would be still a valid sell side, okay, to the downside. So crude oil is another one that I'm keeping watch. Okay, and then of course we have the S&P. The S&P continued to come down pretty aggressively. Okay, so if you take a look at how things are developing right now, that may be actually a wave. A wave 3 itself, it's really strong. We're definitely bearish on that, right? So if you are looking at equities, we are currently experiencing some kind of a pullback. Okay, from the tip to where we are is about a 10% pullback, right? Which, to be honest, is quite significant. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we are in a bearish market, right? Thing here is this year itself the market has extended quite a bit, right? So some sort of a healthy pullback, I think it's pretty common. If you pull your fib here, okay, we are currently testing around that 382, so it's pretty okay, right? I mean, yes, depending on how you're positioning in terms of your portfolio. Okay, for me personally, in terms of equity side of things, some of the trading stops have been triggered. Some of the shorter term trades has also been triggered in terms of the stop. Okay, so we're managing a little bit more actively in some of the positions. Some of it we're just holding it for the long run. This 30%, I wouldn't panic overall and say it's a bearish market. It's definitely very strong in the momentum to the downside. I don't think it's a good idea to just buy it up right now immediately, but of course, if you start to see some sort of a sign where this down move may have been completed or is about to complete, we can start to look out for opportunities of a rebound. Okay, so this might need a little bit of patience, this might need a little bit of time, but right now the key area that you want to keep watch would be somewhere around 5080. Okay, so we'll see how things goes. The yen pairs over here, I think we have nothing much to say. It's just basically a very impulsive move. I personally wouldn't be looking at trades at this point in time. Okay, Pound Australia here get a break to the upside, but of course, again, you can see that wick coming back down. So again, that would put us now with a high here. Okay, and we are potentially looking at a pullback. Okay, so not surprising if let's say the market decides to pull back quite a bit towards the 50 and 618, right? Okay, so that would be something to look out for. If you go down to the lower time frame, okay, we may not have a confirmation, or I would say a setup yet. Okay, I will be a little bit patient on this, right? I think there's no need to really rush things through. I would personally wait and see if we can get a move down break of this, maybe a pullback, and then we'll look at the trade. Okay, obviously if not, it's not gonna just keep going down, right? It might pull back a little bit, goes down a little bit, pull back a little bit, break of this, and then from there we may have some sort of a minor swing high, and then we'll wait for the pullback, and then we'll look to sell. Okay, so we'll see how the market continues to develop from here on, but right now I'm expecting some sort of a pullback. Okay, Euro Canadian, very bullish. Okay, even break through some of the key areas here, you can see. Okay, with momentum. So right now we are obviously more inclined to look for upside, but again, don't buy at the very top of the impulsive move, right? You want to wait for a decent pullback, then only we start to look into buy trades. Right? So this might take some time as well, so I'm just gonna keep monitoring how things goes. BTC did a massive drop over the weekend this morning, so we're definitely short-term bearish right now, but I wouldn't be too eager to sell at where we are, right? And the market is kind of testing this bottom area here. I will personally be patient as of now. Okay, so I think one of you actually also mentioned to look at DYDX against the USDT, right? Okay, so this one, I mean, generally the crypto market has been selling off quite hard. So this one over here, obviously, there's nothing much, right? I mean, it seems like it's really all-time low. Yeah, kind of seems like, that's like a serious low. To be honest, there's not much we want to pay attention right now, because if this is going to be an impulsive leg, you want to give the market some time to develop the next piece before committing to a particular direction, right? Because we need a clear structure. Right now we have nothing. Okay, so that's really easy. So I think crypto right now for the week, pretty just stay out of it. Okay. If you look at some of the global index, hey, I think Jeff here asked about the German DAX, right? Initially we were looking at this, you can see my analysis, right? We're looking at a rebound here. We didn't really get that, and basically it's a very impulsive move to the downside. So to keep things updated, right? There's a very good possibility. Generally, overall equity seems to be in a pullback phase, right? So with that impulsive move, you want to be careful, because what can happen is we may do a little bit of pullback, but we may drop one more time before the bounce. Okay, so because it's impulsive, my take is you probably wait for a pullback first, correctively. If it develops correctively, then you have a sell opportunity. If not, you just continue to be patient and see how things develop. Okay, if you take a look at most index, right, not only on the German DAX, but I think S&P here, we see the impulsive drop. NASDAQ definitely, Dow Jones definitely. Even the FTSE here, we were anticipating this drop. Initially, we were saying that if this actually does a little bit of a corrective, we can take the sell trade. We didn't even have the opportunity, right? The market just basically tanked. Yeah, so I would say general general equities, for example, not only in the US market, everything is dropping. Okay, so I don't think there's really anything that is giving us a opportunity to be getting involved in, right? The reason is because if things are moving impulsively, we don't want to be jumping in. Okay, at the end of the impulse, right? We always want to be patient and wait and see how the market is going to develop next. Okay, so all this index, really nothing there. If you manage to catch some of this here, great. Things like the Switzerland side of things, I think we talk about how there's a good odds that this will probably come down. So yeah, some of this here we managed to really identify the opportunity, but again, based on my personal strategy, I did not get involved in it because there's no setup conditions that were fulfilled, right? So I did not get involved in it. Like UK 100 is one of them. Okay, so those are the things to note. Yeah, so other than that, for me right now, the primary focus I think I've highlighted over here as well just now will be very much on dollar Canadian on the short term push back to the downside. Gold here potentially may build into a setup that we can look to sell as well for one more leg. Crude oil as well, right? If you can get a pullback, we can look to sell it. Okay, and GBP odd, probably need to give it a little bit more time, right? So this one would not be so soon. The dollar CAD, okay, gold as well as crude oil, I think those are the more recent opportunity that we can really keep watch. Yeah, this one probably tomorrow, right? Dollar CAD, if you can get a candle close and then a pullback with clear break of structure, okay, then if you can get a pullback, then that would be a sell opportunity. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so there are also a question I see over here, option about Malaysia ringgit. I think maybe you're looking at the dollar against MYR, right? Okay. Yeah, I mean the dollar is generally falling across board. Okay. Some may say that, oh, the ringgit strengthened. Actually, not just the ringgit strengthening. Maybe yes, but more importantly is the dollar is actually falling across board. Okay. The outlook on this, if you're looking at longer term, is that there's a very good chance the dollar will continue to weaken. Okay, because if you take a look at the dollar index, as I mentioned, right, there's actually a huge downside opportunity. And then, of course, if you combine it with the fundamental perspective of things, if the Fed starts cutting, it may continue to put a little bit more of a selling pressure on the dollar itself. Okay, so overall, across board, okay, generally the dollar would likely be bearish, right? Of course, some of the currency like pound dollar, is a little bit more of a neutral point because pound is also weakening, the dollar is also weakening, so kind of both are weakening and they are playing tug of war. Okay. Okay, one of you asked about Ethereum. Again, Ethereum came down very impulsive, right? Generally, all the cryptocurrencies, I would say right now, you probably don't want to touch it fast. Okay. Give it time. Okay, give it time because the market, again, you can see break this channel structure very impulsive. I wouldn't be jumping into any trades at the moment, right? Probably want to just give it time. Okay, so really nothing there on Ethereum. Cool. Yeah, so hope that's clear, right? I think my focus for this week as of now isn't like a lot of things on the table. I think generally those are the three things that I would pay a little bit more attention that I've highlighted just now as well. Okay. Yeah, in general, that's all from me in terms of the update for this week. In terms of the outlook as well, I think generally the trend starts to build in quite clearly. Weakness on the dollar. And then of course yen continue to strengthen, but you want to wait a little bit more time for the market to pull back before you jump in. Equities in general are doing a deeper pullback, right? So that's something to know as well. Cryptocurrencies are all coming down. You probably don't want to touch it in the near term. Then of course the focus here very much for this week seems to be on commodities first. Okay. Odd cat here. Okay, we did get a bounce at the bottom of the channel, right? So yeah, I mean, we may get the upside for the short term. Looking at this structure here, okay, the first primary pullback area will be around at 15,618, right? So if I zoom in now, okay, okay, you'll be able to see that the market actually bounced off quite nicely, right? So the projection over here would be if we can get some sort of a corrective pullback, we may get that short-term upside, okay? So if you need to look for setup, you probably can go down to the lower time frame, okay, and wait for a setup to come in for you to take a trade, right? For me right now, there's really no setup there, okay. The expectation here is a pullback, right? But of course, you still need to wait for a setup to come to you before you kind of take the trade. Okay, so yeah, nothing there right now. Oh. Okay, can I explain the unemployment rate, any risk at the moment? Basically, unemployment rate is rising, right? So historically, from a macro perspective, when unemployment rate is going up, okay, there's a good chance we'll go into a recession period, right? There's a macro indicator that you can use to track. Let me just put this up. Okay, the macro indicator that you can use to track, one of it is the unemployment rate. Sorry, let me just do a check. Do I have it here? Okay, I don't. Let me just add that in. Okay, unemployment rate. Basically what we do here is we go into the monthly cycle, okay, and then you add in two moving averages. Okay, you add in two of it. One, you use the 12 months. Okay, I'll just use another color. Taken it a little bit. And then the other one, you use a 36. Right? So once you start to observe, right, which is basically what happened for the last week's data, we have crossover between the 12 months and the 36 months average, okay? Now, when that happened, historically, it gives us our first warning sign that within the next 6 to 12 months, we'll very likely see a recession, right? In fact, this particular indicator has not failed so far, which means now that it has really crossed it, we'll see a recession within the next 6 to 12 months, right? Now, recession doesn't necessarily mean that the entire market is going to crash, right? It's just a technical recession, which means that the economy is likely not going to perform well. And again, as I mentioned, that put pressure on the Fed to cut rates, right? So that's where you're seeing the dollar really continue to drop. From a macro perspective, I think the dollar has more downside potential right now. And of course, this indicator here seems to suggest that recession is coming. Okay, so that's the macro indicator that can use to identify in terms of unemployment rate. Okay, Wix has risen quite a bit and bond yield dropped a lot. Yeah, right, because it's basically a inverse correlationship between the VIX, the bond market, as well as the US market, right? In terms of equity. So when equities tank, usually the bond price would go up. Okay. So again, bond price and bond yield also have a negative correlation. When bond price goes up, the yield will drop. Okay. Yeah. Is it because it's near US election? No, right? I don't think it's really because of the election itself. I think fundamentally and from a macro perspective, the recent drop in equities is really because of risk off environment, right? What I mean by that is, of course, if you take a look at the economic data itself, there is that surprise element that kicks in. Okay, we did not, or say in general market, did not expect unemployment rate to actually shoot up so significantly, right? The market happened over the weekend last Friday, so things are starting to panic, right? So we are like in a risk off environment. People are repositioning as well. They're going into safer assets and things like that. So crypto indices are dropping. Okay, in general, I don't think that's like really because of election itself. Okay, it's more of like a macro perspective from the fundamental data that we got on Friday last week. Okay, good. Yeah, so that's all from me for today's session. I hope you pick up a thing or two. Okay, all the best for the week itself, and we'll see you guys in the next session. Okay, see you guys. Bye bye.